filter out all those people way ahead of time to save yourself money and time.
And I think as you hire more people and you let go of more people, you're going to figure out, oh, like we had to fire this person. What has happened, beautiful people? Let's talk about hiring. We figured out before the episode, before we hit the record button, and you missed all the different fun jokes and inappropriate comments and things of that nature. Maybe one day we'll release those. But for now, Connor might still become president of the United States. We need to keep those under lock and key. Between the three of us, we've hired minimum probably 100, 150 people, which I don't think is necessarily super common in the boutique gym space. We have plenty of successful hires and also probably a heck of a lot more unsuccessful hires, if I'm speaking from personal experience. And so what I thought would be useful today is just have kind of each of us hop through your favorite kind of hiring tip. So what's a tactic that the folks that are listening to this can take out of their hiring process and potentially help them avoid some of the mistakes that we might have succumbed to over the years? Connor, we'll go alphabetical today, even though Mark's a day one guy. We'll let Connor kick us off. Connor, what is your favorite hiring tip?
Yeah, to be honest, you just threw me off because you usually go Mark first. I was not prepared, but you know what? I'm gonna think on my feet here. Think on my feet.
Okay, all right, we can do this.
I would say this is maybe a little bit easier said than done, especially if you're hiring your first person. But once you get a team in place and you have a quote unquote leadership team that you trust and rely on for the operation of your actual business, I would say my little secret is to involve them in the process. I have two people specifically within my leadership team. They are in the first three parts of the hiring process where I'm almost completely, and again, this didn't start like this, but I'm almost completely hands off, where I rely on their judgment of just overall character, because they're going to be the ones that are working with the people, the new hires, on the day-to-day basis. I am not at this point where if there's like a character flaw or something that really, honestly is like really annoying to them, to where they don't think they fit our culture, I trust their judgment. So I think if you have someone in your business, and it may even be a client, maybe it's a client that you've had for a while. They know what your gym's about. They know what your culture is about. Maybe get that, somehow plan to get that potential hire in a conversation with that person and get their feedback. Like, hey, can they hold a conversation? Do they have any weird habits, tics, things like that, to where my leadership team is almost like the filter and the gatekeeper, to where if they move along in the process, we have a 3-step process. If they move along, it's a lot of their say. So like they don't get to the next part of the process unless it gets the check off by my leadership team. So I think all said and done is get someone else along in the process. If you have a staff in place already, involve them in the process. If you're, how do you even say that word? Solopreneur. Yeah, that's hard to say. If you're in that part of the process right now, maybe get someone that is a client that you trust, that they know exactly where you're trying to get to in terms of what you're trying to build and the culture that you guys already have in place. Get them involved in the process.
Love that. Love it. Love it. Mark, anything to add on that front?
I do definitely varying opinions and inputs. People's different experiences and perceptions are going to pick up a lot more. You can't have enough of that when you're going to make a hire, because your people are everything. So I totally agree with that. If you're in that position to do that, and maybe if you're not in Connor's position, obviously, which has taken years to get to, of course, even if you just maybe have one other trainer and you want to bring a candidate by and just have them observe or definitely interact and just say, coach them up a little bit on, hey, this person's coming by, we're looking to hire this, let me know what you think. And even just their opinion of what they thought. Trainers work with a lot of people. They're pretty perceptive of first impressions. So maybe that's the starting point of getting involved. His tip of getting more people involved, that could be it too. If you have multiple leaders on your leadership team, then yeah, by all means, get them involved in the process and capitalize on their expertise.
Yeah, I think it's my tip. And Mark, I'm going to make you go last. Best for last on this, huh? Because mine fits in that category as well. But essentially, the biggest thing I think you can do I shouldn't say the biggest thing, because I try to catch myself in my superlatives, right? Because there's only one biggest thing in any one situation. But one of the best things I think you can do in the hiring process is try to figure out who's not going to be a fit as early in the process as you can. So if you go through all of this hiring and training and onboarding and then you bring the person on and they just completely clash, with every other member of the team, you're going to have a bad time. Like, I would much rather figure that out early in the interview process before we made the decision to even get them to speak to you, right? If you're in Connor's situation, or certainly before you bother to train and onboard and do all these different things, I'd much rather weed those people out sooner than later, right? As early in the process as we possibly can, which is essentially my tip. And just the tip: create filters for your hiring process. So if this is the first time that you've hired somebody, then maybe you need to borrow some expertise and some criteria from us. So for me, best thing you can do, and I think I stole this from Mark Fisher, shout out, I forget what the name of the seminar was back at the time. I think it was Inside the Unicorn. I know they're business for unicorns now. Basically, if you don't know what you're filtering for and what you're selecting for, you're going to have a tough time making the correct selection. So the easiest way for most of us to, I think, about these things is think about the things that piss you off, the things that would make the trainer, the employee, maybe you're hiring an admin position, whatever, create the position from hell. What would the worst trainer in the world be? Someone who's late, someone who's a know-it-all, someone who thinks they know, everything there is to know about training, someone who's going to come in and you're going to have to fight with every time you write a program and try to have them execute on it. You're like, oh, dude, just I know what I'm doing. When it comes to programming, I don't need you to teach me on that front. I know more than you. I don't want somebody who's going to come in and say those things, depending on the position you're hiring for. If you're hiring for a head trainer, maybe you do want somebody to come in who really has incredible experience and things of that nature. But create the position from hell on one side, because typically, if I told you guys to come up with 10 pet peeves or 20 or 100 pet peeves for trainers, like things you don't like about people in the industry, you can typically, like, the pin's not going to stop going. Whereas if I say, hey, what are the qualities the best trainers have? You might have a harder time coming up with the positives. So you do the negatives. So brain dump on the negatives. The antithesis of those things would be the positives. Oh, I hate people who come in and think they know everything. The antithesis, the opposite of that would be, oh, I need someone who's always learning, obsessed with getting better, humble, is open to improving and looking at things in a different way. And so you create those kind of criteria and those filters. And then I want to create situations where I can filter out for those things and self-select against those things as early in the process as possible. So my big example of this, we had a girl come in ages ago, and she was a great values fit. She was in it for the right reasons. Like, I thought she was going to be an incredible part of our team. But at the time, we were doing this large group as more of a party in the session. So it was loud, it was high energy, a lot of music, et cetera, all those things going on. And she just couldn't get loud. Like, she could not control the room at all. And we tried to coach her up. We coached her up for weeks on it. Try to give her confidence. Oh, such and such, you're going to do great. Like, just get a little louder, whatever. And it never happened. She ended up quitting. And so we put all this time, energy, a little bit of money and whatnot into this person. And then she ends up quitting, and it didn't work out because of the volume. Another guy brought on as an intern. We used to do game-based conditioning. Basically, it was my way to stay in shape. We did ultimate football and whatnot after sessions. And this dude, like, literally got butt hurt, is the best way to put it. Just like actually upset when he would lose to a 16-year-old girl. This isn't an adult male that would get like douchey about competing with the kids. It's not like, how do you select it? This guy's just a douche. Couldn't laugh at himself and have fun as a part of the process. And I added this filter to our hiring where, and I've seen it done in different places in different ways, but basically we threw shit all over the gym floor. We blindfolded me or one of our coaches. I go to one side and the trainer has to be on the other side and basically talk me across the gym floor, right? We turn up the music to the level that it was going to be in the sessions, maybe a little bit louder. And that person has to now be able to communicate across the room, right? In a game type setting, if you will. And if they couldn't communicate loud enough to get me across the room, guess what? Like, you're not going to be able to operate in this environment. Like, you're not going to be able to communicate effectively. You can't do the job as it stands. And so you're not going to be hired. What I also added was that, all right, we're going to start the timer. We're all the candidates for the position are competing against each other. You got to try to get me, like, the person who gets me over the fastest wins. And then I'd have me or my trainer, whoever was blindfolded on the other side, I'd fuck up on purpose. If they said step forward, I'm going to walk forward with big steps fast and purposely like crash into shit. And then the person on the other side, we had one guy, he got like actually pissed off at me for fucking up. It's okay. You're not able to laugh at yourself with this. You're not able to compete in a positive fashion. You can communicate loud enough. That's fine. But yeah, like, some of your personality came out and it didn't seem like it was going to be a fit. Great. I just filtered against that. In other positions, we do the same thing. So, we hire for a lot for tech help and things of that nature now in the agency. Dude, the best thing you can do is have people do the job before they actually get hired and do the job. So give them a micro test version of the task or the job that you're going to have them do. We do this with video editors. We do this with tech help, etc. If it's a video editor, I'm going to take a 5-second video and have them do the little subtitles and everything else. And if they can do that well, great. I'm going to give them something where maybe it's like some tougher words. So if you're hiring people from overseas to do some of these subtitles and things of that nature, guess what? Like, they need to be able to understand English. They need to be able to produce the thing that you're asking them to produce. And if they can't do that, then guess what? I don't need to hire them. Doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them bad fits for the positions that you are hiring for. So the best thing I think for us in terms of the hiring process is create filters and tests that match the position on the other side as a part of your hiring process. Instead of just expecting, I don't care how good of an interviewer you are, I just don't think you can tell whether or not someone's going to be able to do the job by asking a few interview questions. Tell me about a time that you were challenged. You overcame it. That tells me a lot less than challenging somebody and then having them overcome the thing or having them do the job, things of that nature. Are you going to be able to control a room and talk loudly in a high energy environment? Yes, I can. That tells me a lot less than actually having them do the job. So add filters to your shit. Don't be afraid to have sort of unconventional tests as a part of your hiring process would be my kind of favorite tip. I've been talking too long, but I can go down that rabbit hole on training salespeople and everything else if y'all want me to.
No, I like that. Have what an A+ looks like, right?
Yeah.
For that specific position. And then you can base everything off of that just to who is not a fit and filter out all those people way ahead of time to save yourself money and time.
Yeah. And I think as you hire more people and you let go of more people, you're going to figure out, oh, like, we had to fire this person. I'm not going to share Connor's most recent firing story because I don't think you'd be able to select against that. I'll share that for another podcast, but that one's never going to see the light of day. Salespeople being coachable. Oh, we had somebody come in and their ego, like, they just could not handle being coached. Great. I fucked up that one. We're going to let that person go. And now I'm going to add to the hiring process. I need to coach the person in the hiring process. We're going to do a little role play. I'm going to coach them up. And if I feel like the ego's kind of up there, I'm going to try to take them down a peg, give some coaching, and see how they respond to said coaching before I actually hire them, right? Now we're not going to hire somebody that just has this blatant ego that's going to derail the rest of the process and cause me to have to fire them later on. It's never going to be perfect, but man, if you can add those filters and be cognizant of the fuck ups in your hiring process and what you're selecting against, I think it'll make things, like Connor said, save time, save money, etc.
But you got Marcus Aurelius.
I think if you would have asked me like 6 months ago if I was good at hiring, I would said, oh yeah, of course I am. And then so far year to date in 2023, really in a 4-month time period, I just finished a hiring spree of hiring 19 people in about 4 months. And I do pretty much every except the initial call that we do. I don't do that one. And I had it delegated, lost some people, realized the process isn't where we need it to be for some of our goals. Let's go back and redo that. The only way to go do it and to get better at it is to practice it. I think hiring is probably one of the worst skills, definitely in a gym owner, that I've seen, because again, how do we mainly do it? Like, we go through, like, we have to hire a couple people here and there as we get started. We don't do it all the time. Oh, our team's good, then we're good. We're fine. Oh, we lost somebody. It's the worst thing ever. And then we strap up again and try to do that and shake the rust off and all that. Just to get good at it, you have to do it. And I could tell you too, that even then, out of those 19 people, the first one I hired was way different than the 19th one. So we did the math. It was over 300 hours, I think, year to date on hiring, and now we're going more. So it's probably more than that. So you want to go good at something, it needs to be practiced. And this is the biggest thing on that. Now, that's not my tip. That's just the foundation of which to learn from as we go through some of this stuff, because the best way to get these tips is to make the mistake and then move on. Because if you're planning on being in business for a while and be any sort of leader and have a team, then this is a constant. It's never going away, and you have to learn how to get good at it. Otherwise, you'll be eternally frustrated. So I think we need to pull ourselves out and remove the emotion and just look at it as an aspect of our business objectively. And how do I make this better for next time too? So the tips that Connor gave, where he has people involved, that doesn't happen without a system that's been built out and tested. What Jared was talking about with the filters and criteria, that doesn't happen without, I would frame that a lot of work on core values and then having this criteria against those core values and be able to explain those core values and have everyone on our team be able to explain it too. And how do I engross that in the hiring process, right? So they're spot on with that. That takes practice and a lot of hours. My tip for right now, which really is whether you have a team of 30 or a team of 2, is make the correct hire, not the convenient hire. Hence, for someone like myself, as in most people, they're always on the next thing. always excited about the next thing. Oh, we need to fill this role so I can go and do this and fill this void so I can go explore this opportunity and our sessions are covered or whatever it is, right? And you make the convenient hire and not necessarily the correct one. You overlook a few of those red flags, as GR was talking about, just because it takes a ton of energy and time and headspace to hire the right person. And we just want to be done with it. My veteran self now, my grizzled veteran self, would say, no, make the correct one, because now we know what the correct hire is. And sometimes that's just making a good decision on who not to hire as well. I also, with that caveat too, things change, people change. You will never 100% knock it out of the park every single time. There's always a little uncertainty. That's why we have to lead. That's why we have to manage. That's why we have to onboard effectively, all that kind of stuff. Life changes for us in the business. It's a living organism. It's constantly evolving and changing. We have to adapt to it. Some people can't adapt or won't adapt. And you won't know that in the hiring process too much. There's definitely ways to have, I try to hire for, like, obviously make the correct hire for the correct role, and then gain a little bit of foresight of, hey, if this happened, this could be an issue for this person. I just don't like to be surprised anymore. And if we're surprised, then that's a bad one. You could have been like, yeah, I expected that. That's a win too, because people are going to come and go. So I feel like that's really a deep understanding of hiring too, which I'm not going to go too far down that, but that's my big one. Make the correct hire, not the convenient hire.
I would have.
It's the same thing. Sorry, one more thing too. I guess I'm promoting. I made this mistake this past year too. You gave the promotion because it was the convenient promotion, not the earned promotion. I had this role. Let's just make this person do it and call it good. And instead, you promoted somebody for more responsibility in your company, and it was the incorrect way to go about it. So it created a waterfall of other issues rather than maybe just leaving it vacant and seeing what happens.
Dude, I wish I would have. I need to have make the correct hire, not the convenient hire, burned into my skull. I think it's because when you're starting off, a lot of times you're making a hire, I think, based on desperation. Even if you're not starting off, I think there's situations where you're an established business and all of a sudden a key person decides to leave for whatever the reason is, or you need to let them go. It's shit, how are we going to handle this? And it's really easy to just hire the first interview, that comes through. And maybe you get lucky. And sometimes that first interview ends up being the right type of hire as a possibility, but you're not going to know that until you talk to 3, 5, 10, whatever the hell other candidates. We've seen it in the coaching business. There's one guy in particular that I'm thinking of as I'm speaking through this and listening to Mark's tips. The guy's hired 3, 4, 5 different trainers. And guess what? He's made the convenient hire pretty much every single time, right? It's somebody that's fallen into his lap or that happened to apply. And you're trying to there's this negative thing, but I think I can maybe make this work. And guess what? It hasn't worked. And so what's happened, instead of waiting and hiring the right person the first time, he's made the convenient hire 4, 5, 6 different times, put investment in time, money, and energy into onboarding and paying those people and working with them and going through their schedules and everything else. When the reality is he should have just never hired any of those folks in the first place, because they're all gone now. Like, we've not been working with this guy this long, but he keeps on bringing on the convenient hire instead of the correct one. And I'm living in a glass house in this scenario. Like, we've hired people that were convenient, that were, they seem like a nice referral, let's bring them on, and they've ended up being wrong. And that's circling back to Connor mentioning the leadership team. We may or may not have an individual on our squad, as you're listening to this, depending on when this gets released, that probably needs to be let go. Is probably a 50-50 ball in terms of being on the squad. And Wifey works in our business, right? Dr. Hoff is our super fancy media buyer, kind of head of ads for our clientele in the agency. And she called the red flags. She called the red flags early, and I overlooked them because it was partially because it was convenient and partially because I thought I could make it work. Now, the good news is these aren't surprises in this situation. Like, I'm not surprised for the reasons that it's not necessarily going well, but I definitely could have avoided some significant financial investment and maybe less significant time investment with this individual if I said, is this a correct hire or is this something that just feels convenient? Like, such a good tip.
It's another episode, by the way, of how do you know if it's the correct hire or not? What are the criteria for the correct hire? And that's a separate episode.
That's a separate episode.
It is. Please don't ever interrupt me again, Mark, when I start talking. Okay. Just kidding.
You must give me time to respond before you add a comment.
No, GR said interviewing one person. Obviously, you've all heard the saying, one is the worst number in business, right? But also not even just interviewing one person. I think a lot of the convenient hires, especially in like our small family owned businesses, it's like people that we know it's just like an introduction or referral, like you talked about. And it's like the easiest thing because now I don't have to get the job ad out. I don't have to get all these other steps in place. I could just place this person right into this position and it's going to be all fine and dandy because they know who I am. I have a relationship with them or through someone and I can teach them position. Or it's like what Mark talked about was we have this person in a role in our business and now this other position opened up and it's like the easiest way to get through our problems is to elevate this person into this next position. And it's like they don't have the skill set, they don't have the other intangibles, the capacity to do it. And it's just like we're going to drive ourselves nuts because we're too afraid to put the upfront investment in hiring the right person. And it's going to be just a merry-go-round of having headaches and not having the right people in the right seat on the bus. As a side note, completely random, another tip is to have your job ad done and your criteria done, like GR talked about in terms of the filters, but have that written out and done before you even get to the position of needing to hire someone. So you should have your job ad ready to be deployed at for whatever position that you need. I think that would save a lot of headaches up front too, but always interview more than one person, always at least talk to several people because now you're not just stuck with one person and to go the convenient route. You at least have 2, 3, 4, 5 conversations to where you can start weighing some of those options out and weighing some of the consequences of hiring this person for this role. Hey, what are some things that I need to look down the path? Maybe not the immediate consequence, but some of those future things that if this person is in this role, what are some of the roadblocks that are going to come up? I just think putting up that upfront work, I think is very important.
I'm jumping all over that because that's hugely important because here's put on my psychological hat again too. We just hop out of emotion, right? And none of us prepare this job ad or the rollout ahead of time. Nobody does it. That's great advice, and it needs to be said. It's not just a suggestion. I think that somebody really listening to this need to act on this, and I'll tell you why, because I'm guilty of this too. We all are, and this will make perfect sense once I say this, right? You're going to get blindsided by someone leaving your business. When that happens, not only the emotion, you're going to take a huge hit emotionally because we're all emotional beings a little bit, and we all have varying degrees of stability and how to get back control of that. Our ability to make strong decisions is what will dictate a lot of our successes. And what type of headspace, say you lost your right hand person, someone's been super loyal to you and all of a sudden something happened and they're out and they blindside you, no notice, right? What type of emotional headspace will you be in? What are you going to have to do physically just from a time perspective to maybe cover for this person? Are you going to be in the right frame of mind to actually write a good job ad and see things clearly and decide, quite frankly, it's no, you're going to slap something together, or you'll stack one mistake, the mistake of not having this prepared, onto what Connor said too, of just, the convenient hire. I'm going to make this convenient hire because I don't do the job ad because I don't have one, and making it seems daunting and I have to then think through it and hire. I don't have time for that. This is convenient. Just that one thing, which sounds so simple, will save you from stacking multiple mistakes on top of it. It's not even a mistake. Hey, someone left. It happened. All right. It is what it is. Don't make that worse. That could be way less worse than if you had this in place. And I think when to replace somebody, you guys heard the statistic, it's like a third of their salary spent on replacing them. So it's super high value just to replace anybody for any reason. And so how do you avoid some of these losses in business? Just as much as obviously we're always revenue, growth, profit, right? I'm really proud of some of the losses we have avoided because we were prepared, right? And if you take that mindset into business, then you're going to be, especially when you start growing a team, you're going to be miles ahead. So that him suggesting that was gold, and I wanted to beat it to death over these last few minutes because it's 100% true. And I'm saying this now too, and there's a role right now that I don't have outlined, and I'm almost like I'm very paranoid that I'm going to need it and I'm going to have to scramble and get it done, right? Again, I'm in a different position these days, in a different state of the business. However, like I still get paranoid about that because I know the backdraft of what's going to happen when you get knocked off guard. So it's a way to prepare yourselves for that. Nice.
Yeah, so much in business. Like business is probably essentially broken down into gaining ground in your market, right? So in the gym owner space, right? This is hopefully gaining us ground in the gym owner market share in your local markets, in your gyms, it's gaining ground on the addressable market in your area. And so much of business is gaining ground. Everyone thinks about gaining ground, get more clients, market, get better at sales, all those things. My service good enough, get more referrals, all these tactics. As you get bigger, I think a lot of the reason that these guys are where they are is because when they're gaining ground all the time, but when they lose ground, they minimize their losses because there's this type of preparation, right? And so if you can do the preparation now, hey, you have a key person, like do a little bit of a review of the business. Quarterly is a nice time to do that and say, hey, where am I vulnerable? Where could the shit hit the fan? Oh, if this person left, man, like that could really leave me exposed. If you do that preparation now and you're ready for it, if and when it does happen, you're going to minimize the ground you lose. It's a very powerful concept. And I love that. Yeah, I had some other shit that I was going to dig into, but that's a killer, guys. That's good stuff. To summarize the tips, all the tips.
Gingerly touch our tips together.
Let us gingerly. To summarize the tips, Connor, involve your leadership team, involve other people. If it's not your leadership team, involve a client, involve a trusted advisor, involve somebody else in the process to get a second opinion on the hires that you are, or the potential hires and candidates that you're bringing into the business. My gingerly touch our tips is basically to create filters for the process. So take lessons from the hires or employees or whatever it is that didn't work out and create filters as early as you can in your hiring process that help you self-select against whatever negative outcomes, negative traits, et cetera, that you want to make sure you avoid on your ensuing hires. And marks make the convenient, or make the opposite of that, make the correct hire, not the convenient one. And oh man, all sorts of fun negative stories. That's the thing that I was going to say. The correct hire can be convenient. And as you've hired dozens and dozens of people, if you've hired 20 trainers, you probably don't need to hire. The next time you need to hire a trainer, you probably don't need to interview 5, 10, whatever people. If you get somebody there, oh yeah, this person's got it. But if it's your first time hiring for a position, dude, you got to talk to multiple folks to make sure you got the right person. So make the correct hire, not the convenient one. I think that was a banger. Guys, really great tips, really attractive, smooth, pointy. I don't know.
Strong tips.
Strong tips, really strong tips. If you guys got value out of that, leave a 5-star review, subscribe, do all the different fun stuff that you're supposed to do to help podcasting people out. Because if we know you like this, we'll provide you more of it. And that's all we got. See you guys at the next episode.